Welcome to again. Hold on. Ready? Wait. And welcome to the Against the Grain podcast. I'm Nick Baldwin.
And I'm Tristan Almada. This is a podcast where we talk to real estate agents doing things a little differently, yet still succeeding at an extremely high level.
In the real estate industry, we often hear that cold calling and smiling and dialing is the only way to a profitable business. And while it's important to keep in touch with people, calling random strangers isn't the only way.
There's got to be another way than reading from a script and reciting the same thing that 100 agents are also saying and repeating.
We'll be talking to agents doubling down on client events, killing it with social media content, pouring into their sphere of influence, building a business around charitable contributions, converting internet leads like a beast, and so much more.
So if you're in real estate and wanting to expand your lead generation strategies and do things differently, do things against the grain, then you're going to want to hit that subscribe button and follow the Against the Grain podcast.
Hit the subscribe button. Do it now. Available on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio. What else is there? Amazon. All of the things. Go. Do it now. Against the Grain with Nick and Tristan.
That's a good one.
Hey, everyone. It's Nick Baldwin. You're listening to the Against the Grain podcast with the organization at eXp Realty. And we are here today with a very special guest. He is a performance coach. He is a best-selling author. He is a multifamily homeowner investor. Not a multifamily home owner, but he invests in multifamily homes. So he does own them, in a sense. His name is Jairek Robbins. How you doing, Jairek?
Very well, sir. Very well. And yourself?
I am doing great. Thanks for being on the podcast with me today. Now, we talk primarily about real estate agents, but I think we're going to kind of veer a little bit and just talk entrepreneurs, small business owners in general. But I do have some questions for you, primarily about real estate agents, and I want to get your opinion on some things that I've been thinking about. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right, so you deal with a lot of different types of business owners. Like, you coach small business owners, but you also coach CEOs of large companies. But let's think about salespeople in general, because that's where real estate falls in. That business focuses a lot on cold calling, right? Like, smile and dial, hit the phones. How many calls did you make today? Why do you think that so many salespeople, like real estate agents, have stuck to this old school tactic of trying to make a sale when there's so many original ways and creative ways to acquire a client these days?
Mainly because it's in the infrastructure of how people are trained. So if you go back to the original trainers who are still training today, even though some of them are getting close to wheelchairs at this point, they teach the basics, the fundamentals, the way it's always been done. And, there's something to that, but most of us don't drive a horse and buggy anymore, even though that's the fundamental mode of transportation. It's the basics, the foundation, how it's always been done. Most of us would think that's ridiculous nowadays. And so you have to think through, at what point in history did driving a horse and buggy become absurd compared to driving a car? And at what point in history was the tipping point the other way, where driving a car was absurd when you could just take your horse and buggy? It's stupid to drive an automobile. So at some point, a tipping point happens, and it's like, this is, it's this way, this way, this way. And then one day it's kind of even. And then all of a sudden, this is the way it's done now. And I think certain technologies, I was just talking to a friend of mine in Panama. He's a client. He owns a call center that has 450 reps that call all day. They dial for dollars. They do all these things you're talking about. And he said, honestly, we're considering shutting the whole thing down because AI and Google Voice and all these things, they're going to put me out of business that fast in the near future. You're going to be able to type in who you want to talk to, what you want to offer them, how you want to communicate, have AI completely scour the internet, learn everything about them relationship-wise, what they're up to, what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, call them and have a conversation that it came up with using sales dynamics to better understand what to talk to them about, what to ask them questions about, how to engage them, how to build a relationship with them, how to then mention things that they're interested in. And a way to say this, if you want to talk about foundation, there was something way back when called the McKay 66, which Harvey McKay would require everyone in his company to go study and research anyone they wanted to call on and know 66 different things about them before you're ever allowed to pick up the phone. Now, as humans, especially us dialing for dollar people, who has the time to look up 66 things to call someone to get no, and then, well, shit, now I have to go research for another human? No way. But with AI, it'll know those 66 things before you could blink. And so the advantage AI is going to have over a human dialing for dollars is insane. Human will not be able to compete unless the human has built prior relationships. And so instead of thinking about dialing for dollars and it's a numbers game and all this nonsense people say, why don't you sit down and ask a question? What is it the people I want to serve? And let's start with who, not how. So who do I most want to do business with? Period. Start there, answer that first question. Who do I want to do business with? I was just talking with a gentleman who's a potential client. We were going back and forth. He just sold an app for $4 billion. And he told me, he said, at this stage of my life, he's in his late 50s. He's $4 billion richer than he was a few months ago. And he says, I have no interest in working with anyone or anything unless it's great people on a project that's super interesting and I believe in. He said, if it's not great people and it's not an interesting project, count me out. And I laughed. I was like, me too. I don't want to work with horrible people on stuff that's not interesting and boring.
Isn't that everybody's wish?
Well, people might wish for it, but few people act on it.
True.
And so I took that concept. I immediately looked around me in my life and I said, number one, are all the people great? If not, who's got to go? And number two, are all the projects interesting? If not, which one's got to go? And I was willing to cut it out that fast. And people say, well, one of my clients told me, if I had $4 billion, I'd do that too. And I'm like, well, that's the reason you don't have $4 billion, because you keep working on boring projects with ridiculous people. Stop doing that. And it kind of clicked. And so this concept of who do you want to work with? Secondly, once you know who you want to work with, what do you want to work with them on? And then the question becomes, what do you need to go do, or how do you need to go about it to go build a genuine, deep relationship with these humans? Genuine. You care about them. You call them. You send them handwritten cards. You think about them on their birthday. You take care of them. If they were to text you, my wheel just popped on my car, you'd say, hey, no problem. Let me swing by and help. Like a genuine relationship. Now, people always tell me when I say stuff like this, you don't understand how our business works. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. Because when I ask people in the industry about the industry, I don't hear the greatest things.
Yeah, well, I think that you're making a good point in that, AI is going to be able to do a lot of things for us, especially find information out that we would otherwise spend hours or days or weeks, trying to scrounge up. Yep. But, AI is not going to be able to be there for a friend or go help someone who has a flat tire. Really? Well, I get it. Okay, well,
I don't know. I've seen Boston Robotics. That thing can jump, spin, run. I'm seeing robo-dogs handling.
But don't you think though that? Yeah, but the relationship aspect, I know AI is going to have that artificial way.
There's that movie where the guy falls in love with the AI on his computer.
Wait, which one is that one?
I think it's iRobot or one of the
iRobot. That's with Will Smith.
One of those movies, someone falls
I think I know what you're talking
AI on their computer. But it's this concept. Right now, what's the edge? What's the advantage that humans have? The advantage humans have right now is the relationship you're talking about. Being there for a friend who needs you, communicating with them, caring about them, knowing what's going on in their world, being empathetic, showing up, having support, having their back. being there when they need you. All those little bits and pieces is the current advantage.
And that is a very strong advantage if we know.
Calling more people is not the advantage right now.
No.
It's not.
I always feel like it's about the quality of the people that you're calling
Right.
as opposed to the quantity of the people that you're calling.
Right. So one of the reasons people make the mistake of dialing for dollars, it's all about numbers, it's a numbers game, stuff like that. Truthfully, what if you came home to your spouse and they just looked at you and you're like, you were basically a numbers game. Like, I just talked to enough guys and said, yes.
I think if you talk to my wife, she'd probably say that, no, I'm just kidding.
But it wouldn't make you feel very good. So if you told your clients the truth that I didn't really care about you, I didn't really want to get to know you, you were just a numbers game to me, and if I called enough people, someone would say yes, and you just happened to be the one who said yes, that's not a relationship you'd want to have. Why don't you actually create clients that you can have a relationship you want to have with them? And if you build that genuine relationship, not only will they call on you when it's time to buy or sell a house, but they'll start introducing you to other people as a genuine friend of theirs. Hey, this person's really legit. They're amazing. Come work with them.
Yeah, no, I love that because, I'm a big fan of AI, as you probably know, but I'm also a fan of quality relationships. And I just,
you're very people-y. You're very people-y.
I'm a people-y guy. So let's get back to real estate agents for a second here. There's a pretty incredible stat. 87% of agents fail out of the business in less than 5 years.
Yeah,
why do you think that that's the case? What are they not doing?
That's in everything. I mean, 50% of small businesses fail in 5 years.
There you go.
5% of small businesses fail in 10 years.
Isn't it like 90 something percent of restaurants close in like a year or something?
Yeah, it's all the same. And what it comes down to, even the ones who succeed, only I think 3% of them or 4% of them are actually profitable. So just because you were the 5% or 25% of businesses that succeeded and stood alive over 10 years doesn't mean you actually made any money. Just you were alive, like you were breaking even. And so when I see those stats, it makes me scratch my head. And the question is, why do they fail? And if you look online, why do small businesses fail? Number one is usually funding, mismanagement of resources. So as a real estate agent, have you learned how to properly allocate the resources to drive the results? Number two is bringing something to market that no one cares about. Not as a big deal in this industry because people want to buy and sell houses. You're not necessarily trying to solve an unmet random need of society. Like you're solving an actual situation that people do during this transaction. So that one's not a big deal in this industry.
But I will, before I forget, I will say though that like the value proposition that you bring to the home buying experience or process can be very original and creative and different, right? Sure. Because instead of just, going through the motions, you can create more of an experience for that client, which
Sure.
is your product.
Well, that's the thing. What's the difference between the Ritz-Carlton or the St. Regis or the Four Seasons and the Best Western?
Mm-hmm.
People would say, oh, it's the quality of the materials they built the building with. I don't think so. Because if you swapped out the front desk person from the Four Seasons to the Best Western and put the Best Western one at the Four Seasons, it wouldn't be the same place.
Right.
And so the question is, what is the service you can provide that makes it worth wanting to pay the difference? Because there's a big price difference between the Best Western and the Four Seasons.
Mm-hmm.
One's $29 a night or $100 a night, and the other one's $1,000 a night or $800 a night. And you get the same square footage, but you get a radically different experience. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at your value prop, what experience are you providing for the clientele that you're serving? Are you providing the Best Western experience? Or nothing wrong with Best Western,
No. Hey,
It's
good for a road trip.
Totally. But, or are you trying to provide the Four Seasons service and really wowing people? I remember when I was a kid, the first time we went to New York City with my dad, we stood at the Four Seasons and he told me, he's like, this place is so cool. You can call downstairs to that concierge and you could ask for anything and they'll make it happen. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you could call down at 2 a.m. and ask for a bathrobe with your name and initials, embroidered on it. And by 6 a.m., they would have one at your door. Like, that's amazing. How do they do that?
We talked about the Four Seasons on last week's podcast with a real...
Like Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons or the building?
Well, we didn't, not the singing group, the actual hotel, because we had a real estate agent on who has a background in hospitality, went to school for hospitality, and he worked at the Four Seasons. He told a story about how he was working at one in Miami, and a father and a son came into the hotel, and the son was probably around 10 or 12 years old. He was wearing a Miami Heat shirt, and they went and got Heat tickets for the dad and the kid without them even asking. But they were like, the concierge was like, hey, they pick up the phone, got the Heat tickets, send it up to the room. Right. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Gary Vee does that. He told a story about in his book where he said the internet, social media is one of the best ways to research people on earth right now, still to this day, where if you just follow them and pay attention to what they talk about, what they tweet about, what they post about, what they complain about, you can see these little opportunities where you can step up and do something special. So someone went on his wine website and bought $300, $400 worth of wine in one order. And he said, ooh, pull up that person's social media account. And he started just tracking and following. What are they tweeting about? What are they talking about? They were tweeting about a football game and complaining like, oh, this stupid quarterback, he dropped it again. Oh, he's my hero. Look, he threw that pass. He was really going off on this one quarterback. And so he had his team go on eBay with a $500 budget, find a signed jersey of that quarterback that's framed, send it to the guy's office with a handwritten card saying, thank you so much for the $300 order. We appreciate your business. We can't wait to do business with you again. Team Gary. They mailed it. Never heard anything back from this guy. Months. 6 months go by, 12 months go by. Somewhere like 17, 18 months later, they get a $1,200 order online, and it happens to be the same guy. They pick up the phone and they called him and they said, hey, we just want to thank you for this order. And the guy says, oh my God, I apologize. I never called to say thank you. I ordered some stuff on your website, a year ago, and y'all sent me the most amazing gift. It's up on my wall in my office, and every person who comes in the office always compliments it. Thank you so much. You got a client for life from me. And, I order X thousands of dollars of wine for my events and company per year. It's all coming through you. And I just want to say thank you again for that gift. So the guy didn't even say anything for like a year, and then he just pops up out of nowhere and makes this giant order and continues to order off the website, all because they found out what he was interested in. They found something unique that directly correlated to what he was interested in, what he was passionate about, and they just randomly sent it to him as a thank you gift. It wasn't a random bottle of wine. It wasn't a gift basket that you put on the counter. It was actually taking time to get to know something about this human being and doing something unique and special for them.
Yeah, that reminds me of a lot of times I hear real estate agents saying, what should I get my client for a closing gift? And I always think to myself, you just went through a transaction with someone, and in some cases, in some states, that could be as long as 60, sometimes 90 days, depending on the process. How do you not know a little bit about what your client's interests are?
That's right.
You should at that point. And if you don't, go online and find out. It's not hard to do.
But you're describing the problem where people were focused on the transaction, not the relationship.
100%. So there's a lot of different ways to run a business in terms of, keeping your clients engaged and keeping them for life and having them come back and appreciating them. But what do you feel is like one business strategy? We'll use real estate agents as an example. We can use small business owners if you like. What do you think is one business strategy that they haven't adopted and maybe they should, or it's just a strategy in general for keeping, clients for life or acquiring a customer or something along those lines?
I mean, in all honesty, it comes down to just building a great relationship. If you go to any city in the world and you look up who's the number one agent or number one person in that place, and you were to go interview people around the city and ask about that human, most of the time people will have the most unbelievable stories of how generous they are and how kind they are and how they're always helping and how they're so supportive and they care about them so much as a person, and they know they care about them too. Like, you hear these amazing stories, and it's this person who just literally loves on their community. They show up to all the events. They find a way to help. They always participate. They're really, truly just community building. And they're building such deep and connected relationships that when it's time to make the transaction, everyone counts and leans on them. And so the thing that people are missing is they're trying to use transactions and only caring about the transaction to get to that place, when if you talk to the people at the top, all of them are relationship builders.
Yeah, it's when it comes back to, it always circles back to relationships.
Yeah.
That's why.
The challenge is, though, people talk about relationships, but if you watch their behavior, they behave in a transactional way.
Yeah, especially with real estate, I always say to agents, this is it may be a transaction for you, like it may be like a business transaction for you, but for the person on the other side, it's an emotional transaction, and you need to remove yourself. Yes, we're conducting business, right? But you have the opportunity. People are very vulnerable when they're buying and selling a home, and you have this opportunity to really get to know them at a higher, deeper level. And that's why I'm still friends with a lot of people that I sold houses for or with over the years, because you just get to know somebody in a very emotional way. And most industries don't have that opportunity.
They all do. Most people don't take advantage of that.
Okay. Yeah. Listen, you go to Target and you buy, a t-shirt. It's not really that emotional, but.
Well, watch this. Have you ever gone to a place like Target and actually had someone treat you so amazing that you'll never forget it? Like right now, just think for 10 seconds, what's a product you bought or something you invested in or a place you went that made you feel so seen, so important, so appreciated, so, valuable in the way they communicated with you, that you're like, wow, this place is great. And in reality, it's just a store. But by the way the person treated you and took care of you, they actually built a micro level relationship with you in nothing more than you walking up to the checkout stand and checking out.
I would probably say it's interesting. So like I've purchased four different cars in the last, I don't know, 5 years maybe, right?
Yeah.
Because my wife drives a car, I have a car, so our leases come up. And anyway, the guy who I go to, the reason why, and you always look at car dealers as like, they have this reputation, right, for not being the most honest. But I always go back to him because he really does try to get me like the best deal possible.
Cool.
Like I tell him what my price range is and what I don't want to go above. He never tries to sell me over that. He won't go, you could get in this and it's only like $50 more. No, I don't want to hear it. Like he keeps me under where I want to be, listens to what I want.
Yep.
And that's all I care about. Just listen, don't upsell me, and try to get me the best deal.
Yep.
And
I'll give you an example. Car dealers specifically. There's a guy who owns and runs the Mercedes dealership in one part of Tampa. He still texts me from like 8 years ago when I went and did some training for him and his team. And he'll still text me and be like, hey, I'm going to the Mercedes Raceway. If you're interested, it's on these dates. Come and join me, on me. I'm like, that's wild. He invited me skeet shooting the day after I did the training. He's like, you want to go skeet shooting tomorrow with me? I was like, I don't really shoot. And he's like, that's okay. You'll figure it out. And I was like, okay. And like, this guy genuinely built a relationship with me over the years. And what's fun is a lot of the people in his dealership build relationships. My wife had a dream car. She always wanted the AMG 65 white with black rims G-Wagon. And so it was a Christmas, and I was like, I think I'm done with the car we have. And I believe in investing in experiences, not stuff. And so I was like, what's a car that would be an experience for my wife where it would change how she felt? It would bring more joy. It would bring more life. And I was like, what? I just looked at her. I'm like, what's your dream car? What's the thing? I've taken you around the world to snuggle with pandas and to feed kangaroos and to, cuddle koalas and feed the swimming pigs. Like, we've done all these things. We're going to go on safari next month in South Africa so she could see more animals. And so we do all these things for fun. And I was like, but I don't really buy things because she doesn't value the things. I don't value the things. But I'm like, hell, let's do a thing that I think would be exciting. Yeah. So I took her to that dealership and I was like, let's just test drive it. She's like, no, it's stupid. It's expensive. It's not worth the money. I'm like, let's just test drive it though. And so I walked in and a young sales guy came up and he's like, can I help you? Now, I never look like someone who's buy a car like that. I wear shorts and flip-flops and T-shirts everywhere I go. So I'm usually the unassuming one that people look at and go, oh, yeah, you're just looking, pal. But I was like, hey, can we test drive this one? And the poor dude had to move 5 cars, open the glass doors to the showroom, pull it down off a rack, and move it outside just so we could drive it around the block. But he did it. And so we got in this car, and the funniest thing happened. I was like, he was like, do you want to drive, sir? I was like, no, this is my wife's dream. Let her drive. Let's see what happens. So I'm sitting in the front seat. He's in the back seat. She's driving. We turn around to the airport road near the dealership, and he goes, let it rip, like really slam on it. Get the whole experience. So the windows are down, the sunroof's open. She slams on the gas. This thing starts roaring down the street. And her face, she's like, and she goes, what? Bro, her hair's flying in the wind. And she's like, what? And the guy in the back seat is laughing so hard. He's like, I wish we would have recorded that. I would sell so many of these cars if I'd just show him that video of what the experience of driving it is like. He's like, that was a sales video if I've ever seen one. And we were dying, and I looked at her, I'm like, how did it feel? She's like, oh, we got to get this thing. And I was like, okay. So we brought it back, we parked it, and we test drove another one just in case. Right. We went back and forth, and what was so funny is there was a reasonable version, and then, this thing that was multi 6 figures to take off his hands. And he looked at my wife, and he's like, so if we're being practical here, and she's like, practical? That one, and she points to the G-Wagon, she's like, that one's practical. And I was like, oh crap, she's taken over by the experience. And we went inside, and this guy's working the best possible deal he can for me if we paid in full or leased it or whatever. Like, he's trying to work numbers to show me the best possible thing he could do for us. And what ended up happening is he was like, hey, here, I'll keep working the numbers. The dealership's closed. I hate to do this to you. Obviously, I really want to sell the car. But why don't y'all go home, think about it. I'll keep working numbers, figure out the best possible option, and we'll iron it in tomorrow. We go home. The magic spell wears off on my wife because she wakes up the next morning and goes, are we insane? This is stupid. That's not a good use of money. We should buy another investment property. Like, she wakes up out of the spell and says stuff like that. And then we called the guy and let him know. hey, I'm so sorry. I'm so thankful for your time, your effort, and your energy. The spell wore off, and my wife didn't want it anymore. And this guy was the most generous, kind, caring dude. He's like, no problem. No problem. I value the relationship with you. I'm sure at some point in your life it'll make sense. And when it's ready, come on by and I'll have it ready for you. And you tell me exactly what you want. I'll get it for you. Have it exactly how you want it. Every single year on the date, this guy has texted me ever since, just checking in. Hey, how you doing? I saw you all online. Congratulations on that thing you just achieved. Just want to let you know we're here whenever you're ready. Happy to serve in any way. If you know anyone who could use something like us, let us know. Hey, I have this little gift for you. Where are you currently living? Is it okay if I mail it to you? I was just thinking about you guys, and I wanted to mail you this. And he mailed us a hat. Hey, every freaking year, this guy. And I look at that, and what's fun is he's created an actual relationship with us in the position that 99.99% of anyone else who sells cars or houses would have gone, oh, screw them, tire kickers, that's annoying, they wasted my time, and they would have been pissed and never followed up. And what's wild is because he's built a relationship, I've had him on my podcast talking about that.
Oh, cool.
I've introduced him to people. If anyone around Tampa ever asks me for a referral to buying a car, I will always send them to him. He's actually built a relationship with me. And he gets all kinds of business from it. He's made more business from me than he would have if I would have just bought the car and left and never seen him again.
Nice. It's the way to do it. Right. Well, I always like to end on a, what?
You got it right.
Yeah. I always like to end on a good story, Jairek, and you're always good for a good story. And that was a good one. There's a lot of lessons in that story. You can't, it's about the customer feeling right. Like I would always say to my customers when I was selling houses, listen, don't settle, right? Like this house isn't right for you. Don't buy it. Don't feel like no one should ever be, quote, convinced, to buy a house or convinced to buy a car or whatever it is. But anyway, hey man, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Hopefully that was against the grain enough.
It was very against the grain. You are an against the grain guy. Hey, listen, if you're listening to this podcast and you liked what you heard, go ahead, hit the subscribe, follow us, share us, leave us a review, do all of the things, because that's how we get the word out on Against the Grain.
Oh, and go buy a copy of this. It's worth reading.
If you're listening, go buy the new issue of Success Magazine with Jairek Robbins on the cover with his beautiful family in Puerto Rico, where most people vacation. Jairek decides to live.
My wife and I decided we like to go against the grain, so we live where people go on vacation.
I know, you told me that. I remember.
One of our favorite decisions.
Everyone have a great day. We'll see you on the next episode.